Hello and welcome back to another episode of Media Munchers. I'm Mathian,
And I'm Adrian.
and we're going to keep things short and simple today. So we got Superman and Lois episode 9, and we got Loki episode 4 to talk about. And that's sort of a mid-season finale of sorts, right? I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
That's how you
in a
classify
lot
the
of
episode?
ways. Yeah, I guess so.
Anyway, yeah, a lot happened, and we'll get to it. But you know what? I should look up what the mid-season finale for Superman and Lois is, because if there was one, I would consider this kind of it. Even though,
Mhm.
I mean, I haven't seen episode 10 and 11, even though that's out.
Yeah.
But I mean, as you saw, there's a huge reveal at the end that we kind of
Yeah.
been building to for a minute. So I guess
Mhm.
without further ado, let's get into that. So Superman and Lois, episode 9. So in last week's episode, the real identity of the stranger was revealed to be John Henry Irons, right? So that's what he
Mhm.
goes by now, and he is locked up at the DoD for questioning. But one of Morgan Edge's test subjects, a soldier with Kryptonian abilities, attempted to break him out. That's when our soup swooped in, gave him a little fight, but not before being dosed with that synthetic kryptonite-based weapon that
Right. Yeah.
I forget. I guess General Lane was developing, actually, him and his team of scientists.
Mhm.
And so, he knocked him down a bit. Eventually, he got back on his feet, and that ended. But as we learned at the beginning of this episode, with the little the little scene in Mexico with the bank robbery, Soups is not okay. He's got some lingering effects from that experimental weapon. So I thought it was really weird to see him. Obviously, like, being hurt by normal bullets. As we saw later, he was bruised up.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed this, but I noticed the way they shot it and the way he was acting. Yeah, he at the end of the day he was sick, but they're almost playing it like, whoa, this is what like a grittier, darker Superman would be. Because there was even one shot where like he was backlit and his costume looked black, like black and red, or just all
Yeah.
black,
Yeah. It was dimmed down.
way down.
Yeah.
And so I was like, they're like kind of tongue in cheek pointing at like the alternate version of it.
Yeah.
And I
yeah.
wonder if there's anything more to that, or they just wanted to, like, it was just a tongue in cheek thing where they were just like, haha, look what happens when he's like not fully there mentally. I don't know.
Mhm.
Am I reading into it too much, you think?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Well, all I mean to say is I just thought that was interesting that they went out of their way to consciously make it look that way when he was not himself.
They've definitely led into that story prior. So
Sure.
yeah, I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, like maybe they might be building to a moment, a make or break moment for him on this Earth later on in the
Mhm.
in the season, like where he gets tested, like really tested. And he's
Right.
about
Yeah.
to
And
snap
then maybe John Henry Irons has to come in and
and like set him straight.
Yeah, set him straight.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's just a theory, but I feel like they may just on the back burner be teasing that. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, so he eventually, he knocks everyone down after he takes a little quick cat nap on the floor of the bank, and everything's back to normal. And then so he dips out of there, and after he comes home covered in bruises, a quick talk with Lois leads Clark to come to the conclusion that synthetic kryptonite is still in the system, obviously. So they reach out to General Sam Lane for help. Lois is obviously not very happy with her father right now. Chews him out too at a certain point in the episode. But somehow it's communicable. I hate that word. And anyway, long story short, the transfer of the virus happens from father to son, since Jordan's also
Yeah.
got these manifested Kryptonian abilities. So he's taken a turn for the worse, because he's like blowing ice snot all over the school and himself
Yeah.
in his room. And I was like, okay. And with that, I don't know if the virus made them manifest or it's a symptom of the virus, but it feels like they're just like teasing more and more abilities for him slowly. So like, how long do you think this guy's flying? You think he's gonna fly, or do you think they're gonna go the Superboy route and not have him fly?
I don't know, because like they've kind of like slowly progressed his powers.
Yeah.
But they're still like kind of making it seem like they want to keep him
Like grounded?
grounded and different from his father.
Right. I really wonder to what extent it's gonna be, and what that means for him as a teenager. Because if he can fly and he has to keep it a secret, I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I can see it like 10 episodes from now. He learns to fly, and maybe he's still keeping it a secret from Sarah or whatever. Because they're gonna be romantically involved at some point. At least that's what I feel like they're leading us on to believe.
Yeah, they're definitely
Leading towards
pushing
that.
towards it,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like he has to like keep that a secret, and then oops, the cat is out of the bag, and then she's like, "You can fly," and he's like, "We got a lot to talk about." So that's something fun we could maybe look forward to. But anyway, back to reality. Things get progressively worse for Jordan. He has to bail on Sarah at her performance again, and even at the beginning of the episode, Sarah's dad is acting weird, Mr. Cushing. I forget his
Yeah,
name,
he is.
but she says he's going through a personality crisis, and I was like, something's up with him. Like it's only a matter of time. Like he's acting too nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so later we find out that he also took the offer from Morgan Edge, and I was like, bruh. So yeah, Jordan bells on her. His lungs start to freeze. Clark opts to fly him out to the Fortress of Solitude. There they undergo this extreme heat therapy with the assistance of the Jor-El AI, and they literally burn the kryptonite out of that boy's lungs. And I was like, oh, that's intense.
Yeah.
But eventually, all is successful, and that freezing breath is there to stay. It seems because even when he comes back, his brother asks him, "What's it feel like?" And he's like, "Winter mint gum or whatever in his mouth." And I was like, "Sweet." But elsewhere, Lois is going closer to the truth about Morgan Edge. Like things are really coming to a head, it seems, in this episode. She's got everyone working, even Clark working as a reporter, trying to figure out the truth. And when that ad appears in the paper, when Morgan Edge takes it out, like Lois is like, "All right, he crossed the line." She goes to confront him in person, and there he says, basically without admitting anything, he admits that everything she's saying is true, but you can't prove it. Basically,
Right.
you know what I mean? And so Lois is, obviously fed up with it. She's upset that they even get that they keep getting put in harm's way, because later in the episode, Morgan Edge sends 2 goons after Lois and her son, and that includes that mother that Lana was working so closely with, right?
Right. Yeah, and they presented that part of the story at the beginning, right?
They did, yeah. I mean, they did a good job of setting her up and what it means to her, and how Morgan Edge is helping everybody out. Like he's been spitting the whole season, and the big revelation with all that new stuff is that Lois is like, it's not the fact there's X kryptonite here, it's the fact that it's been here so long that people are like more able to use it. They've been exposed to it so long that they're more able to manifest abilities. So it's like the people of Smallville. It's kind of like what we joked about earlier in the podcast. So like they're gonna give the whole town superpowers. Well, basically the whole town's eligible for superpowers.
Yeah, essentially.
So I was like, what? Where are they going with this?
Yeah.
And we also got clarification about another event. Remember that big meteor shower we saw like in episode 1?
Right.
I didn't realize that. I mean, I didn't put it together. Maybe the time lined up, but apparently that happened the same time Clark fell to Earth in this universe.
Okay.
At least that's what I got out of what they were saying.
Because he had mentioned that the debris or something
Exactly
like
about
kryptonite or
how all kinds of kryptonite fell on Earth, but the X kryptonite fell in Smallville.
Right.
And that's where it stayed for the last, I don't know how many years, I guess 30 or so, whatever.
Yeah, however old he is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, that makes sense. So he's there for the people because they're eligible to be transformed, essentially. I was like, okay, that's where we're going with this. But back to that fight that puts everyone in danger. Lana senses something's up when not only her husband, but the mother of that friend, I forget her name, but that family friend who also took the offer, walks out on her daughter, and they all go and attack Lois at her home. And so Lois gets just a heads up just in time. And then General Sam Lane steps in with his like kryptonite prototype weapon, which he said in the car, he's like, I haven't used the prototype yet. I was like, was he just going to douse him again? Like, or unless that was a different weapon we just didn't see.
I assumed it was the same.
Maybe. It could be that he just had a small arsenal with him.
Yeah,
it could have been just that.
Yeah, I would assume
like a plan A, B, and C.
Yeah, he would have multiple weapons with him.
Yeah, that makes sense. But regardless, he's trying hard to win back the favor of his family, of course. And so he takes a huge leap in that direction when he essentially steps up and holds the 2 off while Clark comes back from the fortress with Jordan. And so they get into a whole thing. I mean, I think Jonathan ends up shooting. That this was where the twist came in with Mr. Cushing. He was like, "Oh, give me the gun, give me the gun," when in the barn.
Yeah.
And I was like, I still don't trust that. Like, watch them pull the rug out from under us. And yeah, as soon as Jonathan shoots the solar gun at the 2 other evil Kryptonians, he shows that he has abilities too, and he like lasers the gun out of his hand. And I was like, bruh, not Mr. Cushing. He took that. And so that's finally when Clark steps in, and then they all just run away. I guess Morgan Edge calls them off, and everyone makes amends to a certain extent. Blah 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 blah. But the attackers are nowhere to be found, and Lois buries the hatchet with her father a little bit, and then Kyle's still back in the Cushing home. Kyle stumbles into his house, like unable to remember what happened. His wife thinks he's drunk. Lana thinks he's drunk. and Sarah gets sent away, and then he explains what happens, and then his wife figures out, oh, you took the offer, great, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I was like, sheesh. um but at the Kent farm, Lois gets some new information from her editor, which helps her put the pieces together. She comes to understand what we talked about, how Edge has only been successful in transferring Kryptonians into people who've lived in Smallville. That's because all of them have been exposed to ex-kryptonite for a long, long time. And so he needs the people, not the ex-kryptonite, of course. And so as the episode comes to a close, rather, Edge calls out Superman using the communicator that Lois left, or
Mhm.
rather, got stolen from her during the fight earlier. And they fly out. Superman flies out to the desert to meet him, and then we see that he's wearing some sort of outfit just from the collar up. And I was like, watch this dude have his like evil outfit on. And sure enough, we pan out after he like totally deflects Superman's attack, and
Yeah.
it's some sort of Kryptonian outfit. And I was like, where are they going with this? And then he
Yeah.
reveals that he's his brother, and I was like, wait, what? Superman has a brother? Do you know about like,
It-
anything about that history?
No, I didn't. I assumed at first that he was maybe Zod.
I thought it was a Zod reveal.
or another
Yeah,
like minor Superman villain.
right. That's what I thought, and I was like, brother, what? Like, where?
Yeah, but he does have a different crust, and I'm not
Yeah, it looked like
sure
two.
what like does he literally mean brother or does he mean
Oh,
just
like brother, like
Kryptonian?
Kryptonian brother. Here's the thing. I don't know where they're going with this, but I'm like,
Yeah.
are they like, if it is a blood brother, like a long lost brother, then that
Mhm.
implies way more than one child of Krypton was sent out, because at some point they acknowledge Supergirl, so that's his cousin, and
Right,
if
yeah.
that's still canon to the universe they're in. So there's Supergirl. If he's a blood brother, then that's literally a blood brother, or if not, if it's just some random Kryptonian that also got sent. I don't know if my memory is failing me, or was Morgan Edge not like a fully
Mhm.
walking grown man when the first comets hit, or am I remembering that flashback wrong?
I can't.
Well, I'll have to go back and review that. But I wasn't. If my memory for some reason is telling me that he was actually fully grown, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this will do nicely," or something like that.
Yeah.
So how old is this dude? When did he get to Earth? Why is he here? Why is he doing what he's doing? You know what I mean?
Right.
What's
right.
his goal? So I guess that's what we got to stick around and find out.
Yeah. Maybe it's like rebirthing Krypton.
That makes sense. Yeah, if like the
Right.
whole planet's gone and he
Yeah.
wants to create a new Krypton, then that would make sense. That's true. And then I wonder how Irons is going to play into this. Obviously, he's going to try and stop it. You know, he wants to
Yeah.
keep Earth. So, lingering thoughts on the episode as a whole. I mean, a lot happens.
Yeah.
We're finally getting a lot more reveals about. I mean, that Morgan Edge thing was a bombshell in and of itself. You know, like where do we go from here? You know, do they fight for a bit and then they cool down, or like, you know, the cat's kind of out of the bag, not for the people, but for at least Superman and Edge. You know.
Interested to see where they go with Jordan, because it seems like every time he like his story overall is just him kind of complaining and
Yeah.
like sort of getting the short end of the stick, I guess,
Fair.
in a lot of ways. And it doesn't seem like there's really a full on understanding of like where that would end, I guess.
Right. To that note, I think with Jordan's character, he's slowly coming around to the responsibility, the burden, but also the responsibility of being Kryptonian.
Yeah.
Because even in the Fortress of Solitude, you know, Clark has a moment and he's like teary eyed and he's like, "I'm so sorry, like to put you through all of this. Like you didn't choose this." And
Yeah,
Jordan,
I thought that was a great moment.
it was a great moment, and
Yeah.
Jordan even acknowledges it, because that's what he's been preaching the whole time. You know, when he's been complaining, like you said, he's like, "You're right, I didn't choose this," but he also acknowledges his father didn't choose his life either. Like
Yeah.
they were both in a way thrust into this because they assumed they were human. You know what I mean? Until otherwise proven. So I think he's gonna come around. He's gonna become a little more mature. I know he's still a teenager and all that.
Yeah.
But I think he's Clark's doing the best he can, and he acknowledges that. And I don't think he's gonna necessarily turn on anyone if they're cooking up any kind of twist like that. I don't think they were, but
Mm.
I think they're gonna get over that whiny phase pretty quick. I think it's only a matter of episodes before Sarah finds out. You know, everyone else
Yeah,
basically knows everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, pretty much.
Like she's gonna find out pretty quick here. But what does that do to the relationship? I have no idea. You know what I mean? Like he might be so insecure that like, oh, you know, like now you want to date, like yeah, you didn't want to date me before I got powers. Like I can see something like that happening just to manufacture some drama.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
I don't know. But I think they're gonna go. I think they're gonna go with the truth pretty soon here, especially since Morgan Edge is pretty much putting the whole town in danger. You know, like he can only keep things quiet so long. But yeah, with that,
Would you then think that would lead into Superman's identity being revealed.
You know what?
At least like amongst the mainstays. Like,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah,
That's a great question because even I don't know how much Morgan Edge knows because he
yeah,
said something along the lines of, "I sent people to hurt who Superman cares about."
mhm,
Like that implied he said something along those lines. That implies that he knows that if they're not together, they at least have some sort of connection. Lois Lane has some sort of connection with
yeah,
Superman that's more than just friends. You know what I mean?
right, right,
So I don't know the fact that they haven't put two and two together, or maybe Morgan Edge has. He has Kryptonian abilities, and he's supposedly Kryptonian himself. But he said, "You think I wouldn't give myself powers?" So is he being controlled
yeah,
by
yeah,
someone
and
else,
that's also something I got a little confused by because he had mentioned that he was his brother, but then before that he had said he had given himself power, or
bro?
at least that's
I have something trippy to say. What if he took his own offer and the Kryptonian, because they said it was souls, the
yeah,
Kryptonian that possessed him really was, if not, maybe Superman did have a
okay,
long lost brother. Maybe it
yeah.
is Zod possessing him.
Oh, okay. So
That
it's
could be
some
some
kind of
roundabout Zod
like
thing.
body transfer.
Well, conscious at the very
Yeah,
least,
conscious.
like with all the other people who are like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
don't remember, I blacked out." Remember, maybe it is a Zod twist.
Okay.
I don't think
Yeah, I
Zod.
could see
I
that.
don't think Zod was Kal-El's brother necessarily, but
No,
maybe he
he.
refers to
Yeah.
him as that because the brother of Krypton. Kevin,
Right. Right.
you know. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a solid theory we just cooked up. Like I think that could be it.
Yeah, it could be.
But anyway, unless you have anything else, I think that's our thoughts on this episode of Superman and Lois.
Sound good.
We'll take a brief break and we'll be back with some Loki nonsense. All right, and we're back with our review of Loki episode 4. Like we said earlier, this one's a bit of a mid-season finale, so to speak. I know there's only
Mhm.
6 episodes, but things are moving. We had the setup episode, we had like the adventure episode, and now last episode we had like the buddy cop, end of the world. Who is Sylvie to Loki? What do they mean to each other? And in this episode, a lot of that fallout begins to manifest.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of things, in the beginning of this episode, it opens on Sylvie as a young Loki in Asgard, and seemingly just playing with toys, whatever. And then boom, right, like a second later, the TVA is there, Ravona's there to accuse her of crimes against the timeline, and just leave. And like that's it. Next thing you know, she's in the TVA. She's seeing people being like handled, and I think like all kinds of horrible things. And just as she's brought before a judge and about to be judged and probably pruned, she swipes a little tempad off of Ravonna and she just dips, and she's just on the run for the rest of her life. And that's how things open. And it was good that we finally saw that because,
Yeah.
she was really vague in the last episode, and like it'd be nice to see things from her perspective. But like later in the episode, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. When she asks, why was she apprehended in the first place, she doesn't get an answer, right, from Ravonna. And as the episode progresses, I'm like, she seems more and more sinister, Ravonna. Like she's withholding
Yeah.
information. She's, dancing around Mobius's questions. She's very apprehensive to say anything that resembles the truth. Um, and from that moment, I was like, why was she captured? Like they don't give us a clear answer. Obviously, we're not going to have one. But
Mhm.
what did she do? And
Yeah.
it kind of turns the paradigm around in that she's been the villain the whole time, and now she just seems like a victim or something like that. You know what I mean? And she's trying to get back to the TVA and expose them for what they are. She already exposed to Loki, and then later in the episode, Mobius by proxy, that everyone there is a variant. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So what's this bigger conspiracy, Big A? What are we cooking up to here? What's going on, Big A?
You think Ravona's
Running the show?
no? Do you think she's a
Variant?
variant?
I wouldn't put it past her. What makes her dangerous is that I
Yeah.
think she knows she's a variant. I think that's what
Okay.
makes her dangerous. She must agree with whoever's calling the shots or running
Yeah.
the TVA. And she's like, okay, I understand my place and I understand I need to do these things to keep a certain order. And
Mhm.
she's content with it. And because she knows more than everyone else, because she's self-aware and knows she's a variant, that makes her all the more powerful and dangerous. That's probably why she has such a status in the TVA.
Yeah. Maybe.
That's just my theory. But I think that could explain why she does what she does and all that good stuff. But getting back into the order of how things went down, Ravonna goes to speak with the timekeepers in the mysterious chamber or whatever, and comes back to find Mobius waiting for her.
Mhm.
He wants any news he can get on Hunter C20 and the pursuit of Sylvie and Loki. And then Ravonna just tells him C20's dead, and he's like, "Oh." okay, like sorry, like that was out of left field because no one, no one that I've seen before, that was enchanted by Sylvie was killed from that. It was usually from like brute force or like being slashed up or whatever. Mobius can smell something's up, but he doesn't say anything. Back on Lamentus, Sylvie and Loki are using their time waiting for imminent death to bond a little bit, and something about their connection. I don't know how it came to be. I don't want to say it was forced, but it was just kind of like the end of the world emotions probably were bubbling up.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess they fell for each other because they even speak on that. Like her a little
Mhm.
bit first, and then he reciprocates, and that causes that big spike, the red branch on the timeline,
Right,
and that
right.
allows them to be found, which was really weird and ironic.
Yeah, I mean, they sort of hinted at it. Was it
There was the episode
the
before
last
Lamentus.
episode?
Yeah, and I,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
told
yeah.
you about that, and you were like, no,
Right,
it was
and
just the
yeah,
enchantment.
I didn't assume at first because that it just seemed like manipulation, but
I don't know.
I guess they are kind of
Bonding.
yeah, some kind of bond for sure.
Well, Mobius even makes fun of it later. He was like,
Yeah,
"Wow,
he does.
classic, like the mega narcissist. You fell for yourself." You know what I mean? And that was hilarious, and it was true. But yeah, I mean, I could see it. I understand why. And they have a huge connection. They're always on the wrong side of things. It seems,
Mhm.
and they have more in common than they like to let on, even though they have different upbringings.
I mean, they are
The
both
same.
Lokis,
Yeah,
so
exactly. But I mean,
inherently they would have some
commonalities for sure, no
commonalities.
doubt. But there are also, as we see at the end of the episode in the post-credit scenes, Lokis that look and perhaps act way differently than what we've seen before. I mean, I'm sure they have their central themes and
Yeah, yeah, of
ticks,
course.
but like not all of them are built the same. But they just bond over their imminent death and hopelessness, I suppose, and that comes to a head here. Anyway, so good news, bad news. They get saved. That's the good news. Bad news is they're right into custody. Loki gets thrown into one of those torture loops, like resembling Lucifer or something like that.
Yeah,
And it's nice to see Sif again. I was like, cool, even
yeah,
though it's
it
just
is.
like a manifestation of his
Yeah.
mind or whatever.
Do you think this means that we'll see more of her?
Well,
Like maybe
I
in
remember,
the
I
next
seem to
Thor?
remember the Sif was the only one who didn't die because you know how like in Ragnarok they
Mhm.
killed off all the other ones.
Yeah, and she wasn't there.
She wasn't there because of a scheduling conflict. Good for her. And like now she has a job still. So so Sif probably got off on some ship, and yeah, we'll probably see her again. Maybe a little more hardened. Maybe like a little more like everything's horrible. But another thing I wanted to ask, and I'm getting ahead of myself. Uh, we I think I heard somewhere that Loki, I have no idea what version we're gonna see, is gonna be in Thor 4, Love and Thunder.
Oh,
That's what I heard, unless I'm remembering wrong. So I'm like, what version is that gonna be?
yeah.
Because
I mean, it seems like they're maybe leaning towards Sylvie being the new, like I guess Loki.
you think so?
Yeah, like to take up that mantle, sort of
That would be trippy.
how they're bringing in the new Avengers.
Well, what's gonna happen to this Loki? You think he's just gonna rat out his days, or he's gonna die, or
I don't know. I mean, they might keep him to the show and then maybe
like keep him off? But here's the thing, though.
yeah. I guess it would depend on if there's some there is trying to do another season after this.
Yes to that. I agree with that completely. And if they do, that season's going to look completely different than this one, obviously, because
Mhm.
what's implied is at the end of the season, the doors are going to bust wide open and multiverses will be allowed to exist.
Yeah.
So then, in that case, all these variants and other Lokis can and will exist, even on the sacred timeline. So that
Mhm.
might be how we get our Loki back. And maybe Sylvie fights alongside of him. Maybe she chills on this timeline. Maybe she chills on a different one. I have no idea. Or vice versa. Maybe she chills on this one and this Loki lives out his days somewhere else. No idea.
Yeah, it could
But
be.
anything's possible.
Yeah.
All right, back to the episode. After Loki stews in the time loop for a little bit, Mobius pulls him out. He asks for him to give it to him straight, or whatever. There's a back and forth, and Loki, he's trying to convince him that, he doesn't know anything, he's not plotting anything, and then Mobius just doesn't buy it, which, rightfully so. He's been lying to him basically the whole series.
Yeah.
And so, in an ironic twist, Loki ends up lying to him because he doesn't want to get thrown back in again. He ends up lying to him again by saying
Right.
he is the mastermind. She came to him a long time ago in Asgard. They've been planning it ever since. He's the mastermind and she's just a pawn, and he's gonna like kill her when he's done. And then like Mobius, that sly bastard, he says, "Oh no, like she's been taken care of, like she was throwing a fit in the hallway and someone pruned her." And I was like,
Right, yeah.
bruh, and you can see the hurt on Loki's face. And dude, Owen Wilson's such a good actor. He does like a little double take. He looks down, he looks up, and he's like, "Oh, you liked her? Like you fell in love with yourself." I was like, bruh.
Yeah.
Cool. So anyway, they have that little altercation or whatever. Not even an altercation. They have that little reveal, and Loki's like, "What happened to her? For real? She's dead. She's gone." He's like, "Good riddance." And he's like, "No, you like her." And then Mobius finally reveals, he was lying about her. He was like, no, she's fine. She's whatever, being awaiting interrogation. And he's throwing Loki back in the hell loop or whatever. And Loki basically says, "You're lying to yourself." And Mobius is like, And he's trying to put all the pieces together. He's a real truth seeker, that Mobius. And so he goes back into the hell chamber, Loki, and Mobius goes off to have that. He has like a little sit down with Ravonna, yeah. And Mobius is like, yeah, case closed. Like, he doesn't know anything basically. And she's celebrating. She's like, this is good. Everything's great. And the whole time, nothing is sitting right with Mobius. Like, and he's kind of prying to her. He's like, what really happened with was it C20?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, she was fine. She's like, well, what about it? Like, and then he also he pries into what else? Oh, he's like, why wouldn't you let me interview Sylvie? She's like, Sylvie. He's like, that's what he called her. But he's like, why wouldn't you let me interview her? And she's like, oh, I just wanted to protect you. What happened to C20? Her mind melted, da-da-da-da. Just all these lies. And so Mobius, the little sleuth, he exchanges TemPads with her after he encourages her to go put away a trophy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, so he really knows something's up. And then after he
or at least he gets like a sense.
He doesn't know. It's not cracked open for him, but he's very suspicious, is what I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And so he takes a little aside in a little library or records or whatever, and then he finds out the truth for himself. That little recorded interview with C20 saying, spilling the beans, that she was a variant, right?
Yeah, and that everybody else is as well.
Yeah, and then what was it? Ravonna goes to stop her, and he like zooms in at hands. He's like, that Ravonna. Yeah. And I was like, okay, so now it's wide open and it's obvious to Mobius something's going on. Mm-hmm. He goes to pull Loki out. They have the little back and forth. It's funny. And he's like, do you believe her? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I have to take the word of two Lokis. He's like, how about a friend? I'm like, oh, so sweet. And then they get out of there. And then guess who's waiting for them? Ravonna and a bunch of freaking TVA people. I'm like, okay. And he plays dumb for a second. And I didn't see this coming. And then he finally answers Ravonna's question from earlier. He's like, if I could go anywhere, blah, 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 blah. And he tells him like his dream place. And then he freaking gets pruned. And I'm like, bruh, rip Mobius. Because at this point in the show, in the series, everyone who gets pruned, we assume, is dead. You know what I mean? Right. So I'm like, wow, they really killed him off like that, huh? I was like, bruh. And then Loki and Sylvie get taken to meet the little time lizards, and they have their back and forth. They're standing up to them, whatever. And then it turns out that they're like androids, like they're not even real. And I was like, what?
At that point, did you assume that they are like for sure 100% not real, or do you still think that maybe the timekeepers, at least at one point, could have been?
That's a great question, actually, because I thought it was, honestly, before you said that, I thought it was one of two things. I said, okay, before the reveal happened, I was a little apprehensive about seeing them. There was a lot of ceremony and it was all smoky, and I was like, okay, maybe that could be them, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then they go through that whole fight, and it's too easy. Like the way she threw a blade through one of her heads, I'm like, no, it's too easy. Like these beings are supposed to be pretty powerful. Yeah. So I knew something was up as soon as she chopped one of their heads off. And so could they have been real at some point? Sure, maybe. But then maybe there was some sort of power struggle, and then like now they're only figureheads. You know what I mean? Mm. But if that's the case, who's holding the power for one? What's their objective for two? What precious timeline are they trying to ensure is in place? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And three, like, why? Why was there a power struggle, or why aren't they real? Why are they androids? You know what I mean? So so many questions.
Yeah, it could have been like magic or something.
Something, yeah, it could have been a spell. I'm like, why go through all the trouble? Because then that implies those soldiers that are waiting there, that there were briefings. And did Ravonna know they were androids? And or is she calling the shots? Who do they report to? Did she really go have meetings with these androids, and like who's feeding them information?
Right, is she actually
is she talking to a wall? A pre-programmed wall? I don't know. It was just weird. I was like, what? But it just WTF after WTF, because after Ravonna prunes Loki, right before he basically reveals that he's in love with Sylvie, that's what it seemed like they were building to. Mm-hmm. She prunes him, and then Sylvie's and Ravonna's like, what are you gonna do? Kill me? Sylvie's like, no, I need answers. And I was like, okay, I can respect. And then boom, credits, and then after credit scene, Loki wakes up with a bunch of other variants on some other world. It reminds me kind of like of where is it like Nowhere, where Thor got dropped to?
Oh, in Thor Ragnarok,
where he gets the trash planet. It reminds me of that.
Right.
He's like, is this hell? If it wasn't Nowhere, it was
Nowhere was the giant skull.
Oh, okay, then it wasn't Nowhere. What was that trash planet? Sakaar was it? Yeah, I remember like yeah, okay. I remember what's his name? The Jeff Goldblum's character, the keeper, no,
Oh yes, the Grandmaster.
Grandmaster. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember just it gave me those vibes for a second. But
Yeah,
I
yeah, it
wonder
did
if
feel
does that place
like
exist
that.
outside of time? Does everyone who gets pruned go there? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many questions.
Mhm.
And if
Yeah,
so, go
it
ahead.
looks like it
Right?
would be.
Like a holding place, like a purgatory of sorts or something. Like
And
stay
then it
here.
would lead me to believe that maybe Owen Wilson is.
There, yeah, and that was what was refreshing because like, okay,
Yeah.
Owen Wilson's character's alive, maybe he works with Loki or something. You know what I mean? But how did they get out of there? You know, so many questions to be answered next week. But there's all these theories spinning around in my head, Big A, and I don't even know where we're going with this. There's 2 episodes left, and we know
Yeah.
for a fact that the final episode will, when it does draw to some sort of conclusion, nothing's going to be the same. The status quo will be changed. The TVA might be in shambles, or it might be under a vastly different administration. No idea. But like, where do they go from here, Big A? Or what would you like to see? What are you looking forward to? What's intriguing you?
Well, I'm interested to see who the villain is, because like there's a lot of theories going out that are regarding Kang from
I could see that.
yeah,
Mhm.
and
King the
him
Conqueror.
maybe before Ant-Man and the Wasp being the villain of this.
Mm-hmm.
But I would feel like it wouldn't do him too much justice because it's only 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been like even mentioned really. I
In the
mean, he's
MCU.
sort of been like lightly hinted at throughout. I mean, Ravonna in the comics, she had a relationship with him,
Mm-hmm.
so her being there, that kind of you could see it going that way.
Yeah, I see.
Um, but also maybe it could be like another Loki, perhaps.
An even bigger, badder Loki. Wow.
Yeah.
No, yeah, all valid things. Someone was floating around. I don't know how deep in the trenches these people are, but someone was floating around the idea that it, like Miss Minutes had something to do with it. Because when Loki asked her, he's like, "Are you pre-programmed or are you like real?" She's like, "A bit of both." And I was like, "What?" So I don't know. That might be a reach though, because we haven't seen much hinted more
Yeah.
towards that. But I'm really interested to see where it all goes. Hopefully Mobius gets some sort of happy ending. I'd like to see Owen Wilson more in the MCU. That'd be cool.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, I really enjoy his character overall.
Yeah, no, he born for this, dude. He does it so well. I was
Yeah,
like,
he
yeah,
does.
yeah, yeah. That little snark, that little like, I don't buy anything you say. I love their banter. You know, it'd be cool
Yeah, it's great.
if they had like a little adventures on their own. That'd be great.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, a solid episode. I did way more to satisfy my curiosity, but then also enrage it more because, like, you know, episode 3 was pretty self-contained in a way, and then 4 is like blowing everything wide open almost, you know,
Yeah.
in a big way. So it was a good little mid-season finale, and I'm waiting to see what they do next, Big Apple.
Yeah. What do you think about them, like overall story wise, having all these sort of setups in the beginning, and then having them pan out like 2 episodes before the finale?
I think. Well, with regard like to all of the setups, or like with most of the series.
Yeah,
setups?
yeah, because like most of them, they kind of played out how we were predicting, but they came sooner than we expected, and so now like we're left with these 2 episodes and
a lot to do in 2 episodes.
yeah, a lot to do in 2 episodes.
I have no proof of this, but I would assume either they're gonna have to make it a really tight script for the last 2 episodes, or they're gonna be longer episodes. Like episode 3 felt not too long to me, even though it was close to 40 minutes, and episode 4 felt
it was
a little
the shortest.
It was the
episode
shortest.
of the,
Oh yeah, of actual episode, it was like maybe 35, maybe 37 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
Of actual episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was definitely the shortest one. 4 was a little longer, but again, they set up so much, like they teased earlier, that they have to still answer for. I think it's always difficult when you have 6 episodes total to tell this kind of story, and then still set up more for the universe later. It might have gone over better if they had 7 or 8, but then again, it boils down to pacing. Like, how much are you stuffing into an episode? So in certain ways that helps it, in certain ways it hurts it. And it would be nice if we could spend a little more time with it. Like, I don't want filler and fluff, of course, but let things breathe a tiny bit more. You know what I mean? Or like space things out a little more evenly. But since they're not bound to network constrictions, they can do whatever they want. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
yeah, maybe they felt like it would work better as 6 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, we haven't seen 5 and 6 yet, so maybe it does work well.
Yeah.
You know, like who puts, I'm sure it's Feige and a team, but like who puts those constraints? Oh, it's only going to be a 6-episode run. Because wasn't WandaVision like 8 or 9? It was like 8.
Yeah, it was like 8.
8 or 9, yeah. 8, I think it was 8. But regardless, and that did a pretty good job with it's allotted time. Like they had to do a bunch. You know what I mean? Well, they did a lot, but then they didn't do much either because they had fun with the
Yeah.
sitcom trope of it all. And that
Right,
was
right,
fun.
right.
So but come episode 9, they had to like kind of clean everything up. You know what I mean? Pretty quickly. And I hope that since it's only 6 episodes, that they don't have to shove a bunch of stuff in episode 6 when they could have gotten away with the 6 and a 7. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I hope they know what they're doing. It'll be fine. Who are we? It'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, as long as they're not shoving too
I
much
mean,
stuff.
we've enjoyed it up to this point, so I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
assume
I would
they
say
got a handle on it.
yeah. I would say, I've enjoyed them all. Maybe 3 the least in some ways, but also
Yeah.
I enjoyed it in other ways. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Each episode takes on a different little pace or like intensity in terms of like
Yeah.
what's actually happening. So overall solid, and I think my mom was like, "This is like my favorite Marvel show so far," or whatever. And I was like, "Really? That's so
Oh.
sweet." So yeah, those are our thoughts on Loki episode 4. Come back next week. We'll talk more media to munch on. For Media Munchers, I'm Mathian,
And I'm Adrian.
and we'll see you next time.